Hello, welcome to our daily dose of inspiration and practices to awaken the leader within and to make sovereign choices to live a life of wholeness. Hello, I'm Sarah Graves, and I'm Director of Relationships for inviteCHANGE, and I'm substituting for Janet today as she is traveling. So welcome to being the cause of living life on purpose. Our word for today is change. And here I am with inviteCHANGE. And I came here because many times in life, I would look at change as happening to me. And some big anvil that would come and drop itself on me. And I began to think when I met Janet and became involved with inviteCHANGE, what would my life be like if I chose to live with partnering with change, inviting it to happen and come into my life? What would my life be like? I invite you today to try that on. What would life be like if instead of worrying about change and having doubt or dread, what if you invited it? What if every day you invited change into your life? One of my favorite quotes, and forgive me while I grab it here, but if you go onto Google and you look at choices, you look at change, there are over 6,000 quotes just on the first tab. And I have a favorite quote that I've used for years from Dr. Wayne Dyer. If you change the way you look at things, the things you look at change. So how do we apply this into our life? How do we create a practice that we can do today, January the 10th? Well, one of the things that I thought of today as I drove back to my office was an example of change that happened in my life some years back. I'm driving down the highway, a guy cuts me off, and my first impulse was to experience some level of upset, fear, anger, anything in between. And from the back seat, my daughter says, "Boy, that guy must be having a tough day." And it caused me to pause and think. What if I changed my perspective to, instead of looking at the guy as cutting me off and making me angry or making me afraid that I could have hit him, what if I looked at what was going on in his life? Maybe he'd just gotten laid off from a job. Maybe he had gotten divorce papers. Maybe he was out of money or worried about gas. Something had him driving that way. Meanwhile, I could change. I could shift my perspective and find space and grace and compassion. And meanwhile, what happened to me when I made that choice? My cortisol level went down, my oxytocin level went up, and I could live in a place of more spaciousness and grace. So I changed my perspective to him, and then what I was looking at changed right before my very eyes. Well, another favorite quote of mine that has to do with change is the Lao Tzu quote about the journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single step. And sometimes when we think about changing our life, it seems so big, so massive. But yet, if we look at this quote and we know that it starts with a single step, the question is, what is something today that you could do that would begin your journey? Maybe it's something you've thought about or dreamed about for a long time. What would you have to change? It might be something as simple as making a call, changing your resume, going to the gym, or taking a long, luxurious bath. Taking that first incremental step that allows your journey of 1,000 miles to begin. And will you bring patience for yourself and for your journey as you go through the changes. Think of Mother Nature. I have a tree right outside my office that I'm looking at, and that tree goes through so many changes. From the tiny little bud in the spring, that little light green color that keeps popping out more and more and more, and suddenly I see the leaves, and I enjoy it during the spring and the summer, and into the fall it begins to change color, yellows and oranges and reds, and eventually drops to the ground. It's raked up and the kids get to play in them, and eventually the tree quiets itself and goes within and shuts down from outer growth into inner growth. So the cycles of life and the cycles of change, do we have the patience to be with ourselves as we change and as we choose to change? So I want to thank you for joining us today. I hope that these couple of practices that I've offered are useful, and Janet will be back tomorrow. So until then, thank you for joining us, and remember to be the cause of living on purpose.